Hello, this is Mrs. Meckins, and we learned in our previous lesson that sometimes readers will write down their thoughts. They don't just read and have thoughts, but sometimes they need or want to take notes. This lesson is another way to record your thoughts. And we're going to talk about the idea of annotation today. The idea of putting your thoughts inside the text. Remember, when we took notes, we were outside the text. Remember, we did the T-chart on a separate document, a separate screen, a separate sheet of paper. Okay, well, that's called taking notes. Today, this lesson is about annotating your thoughts. And there's a difference. Taking notes is where you put your thoughts that you're having about a text outside the text on another sheet of paper. Annotation is when you record your thoughts about a text inside the text in the margins. It's when you're reading text that you can actually write on. If it's paper-based text, you can actually highlight. You can actually use a pen. You can mark on the text. Or if it's digitally, you can digitally highlight. You can digitally put your thinking voice thoughts. That notion of putting the reading voice and the thinking voice together. Remember, when we did the note-taking approach, we read a text, but we had to jot down the key words the text said and what we were thinking about it. I think annotation is easier. I think annotation is faster, but we can't always annotate. We can't always write inside the book. All right, so you need to have another option. But whenever possible, if you are recording your thoughts because you need this information later, then I would always choose to annotate when I could. When there's just one text, annotation is so much easier. And the reason is because you don't actually have to jot down what the text said. You don't have to take note of the author's words that your reading voice read and said to yourself. No, you're going to just put your thoughts next to the author's words, right in the passage, right in the margin, boom, right there. Circle, make note, highlight. The author said this, and it makes me think this. Author said this, makes me think that. Author said this, this, and this, and I'm thinking this. It's faster. It's so much faster. Now, you have to be able to write in the text, yes. You also have to be able to write kind of small, right? Because if you're doing it manually, sometimes margins aren't giant. So you've got to be able to write fairly small and neat at that, okay? But there's a perk of efficiency with annotation that I think we need to take advantage of whenever possible. But I'll say it again in the final lesson, the next lesson, but I'll say it right now. Annotation is awesome when you can write in the book and it's only one text, okay? We'll talk about what if you have to read multiple texts all at the same time. Would you annotate or note take? Okay, so that's the last lesson. That's the next lesson, all right? So let's not worry about that yet. We're reading one text and we can write in it. Well, then absolutely, I want to be able to use the author's text, what the text says, the author's saying it, right? That is the reading voice. And all I want to do is kind of identify these words made me think this. And I put my thinking voice comments off to the side. Okay, so like when we were taking notes in the previous lesson, you do have to be able to take all of your thoughts. You know, you read, 2 sentences, and then you think, and you might think to yourself, process in 4, 5, 6 sentences. But then when you go to actually write it in the margin, well, you got to whittle that down to a couple key words, all right? And again, abbreviations, text message spelling, let's pick up the pace of this because you don't have much space and you just want to put enough down to remind you of what you were thinking. Okay, so let me kind of show you what this would look like. And I know that you may have read The Carpet Fitter after the last lesson. Remember Eddie, the carpet fitter? And we'd read in the previous lesson a couple of paragraphs, but then you might have finished it and woo, what an ending to that legend, right? I mean, did it really happen? Okay, that's the whole point of a legend. That's for another day. But what I would like to focus in on in terms of using the same passage, the carpet fitter, is how I would go about annotating. What would it actually look like? How and when would I make the notes? That kind of a thing. Okay. Now you can annotate with just a pen. You can annotate with a highlighter. You can annotate with a highlighter and a pen. You have lots of options. Okay. So I'm going to, just for the sake of kind of differentiating between reading voice, the author text, this was in the text, from my thinking voice, I'm gonna make note of my thinking voice in the margins with this black marker, and anything that caused me to have a thought from the text, I'm going to highlight in green. Reading voice, right? The text is the reading voice, the green, and so I'm going to highlight it. Okay, so as we're getting ready to do this, and I'm going to do it live, you'll see me do it right here on the screen for a minute. What I want you to kind of get your arms around, the big difference between taking notes outside the text on a separate document and annotating inside the text, is that it's more than highlighting. You guys, when you annotate, it does not mean paint the text. It doesn't mean just highlight, yeah, that's important, that's all important. Come on. No, it's not so much what the word said, it's what you're thinking. Look on the screen for a minute. See the word annotate there? Okay, now I'm going to show it to you in another way, okay? But the word note is in annotate. It's there. I mean, they took out the E, but the whole point of annotation is to make a note. If you just highlight, you're not annotating, you're highlighting. Most of us are painting. All that highlighting isn't helpful if you didn't put a note. Annotation is the note of your thinking voice next to the author's reading voice, the author's words, what the author actually said. Okay, so you're going to see me actually annotate. And okay, so carpet fitter, remember in the first couple paragraphs that we read in the previous lesson, we found out Eddie was a carpet fitter and he did not like his job, and he kind of felt walked all over, or so we thought, right? Okay, so we're a couple paragraphs in, and so I'm going to pick up here, and I'm just going to read, and I won't hold my signs. It's too many things to hold, but you'll see me kind of pause and look up. I'm having a thought, and then I'll make note of it. Okay. All right. So he felt walked all over. Okay, got it. He was especially sick of it on this hot, humid day in August as he worked to put the finishing touches on today's job. Okay, well, I'm having a thought. I mean, I don't always have a thought with every sentence, but I am having a thought. And it's these words: hot, humid day in August. So I'm going to highlight those. But again, don't just highlight words. So why is it important? What's your thought? Put it in the margin. And so, well, my thought is that he hated his job before, but you add hot, humid day, and oh my goodness, his job is even worse on hot, humid days, right? I mean, I wouldn't want to do that job on a beautiful day, cool day, let alone a hot, humid day. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. As he worked to put the finishing touches on today's job. Oh, okay, I see finishing touches, and I'm thinking he's almost done. All right, so I'm almost done. Okay. Don't just highlight it. Why is it important? Give yourself a quick note. All right, I'm going to put my pens down. All right, don't read with the marker in your hand all the time, because that's when you start painting. All right, here we go. He was just cutting and fixing the last edge on a huge red carpet, which he had fitted in the living room of Mrs. Vanbruff's house. Okay. Rich Mrs. Vanbruff, who changed her carpets every year. Okay, wait a minute. I'm having a thought. It was after I saw that she changed her carpets every year, but it reminded me of Rich. Okay, so who changes their carpets every year? This is making, okay, so we know she's rich. She's got money because she's buying new carpets all the time. And so I just I just kind of put a symbol there, the money symbol, just to kind of, okay, that's where it talked about it. If I just highlight, then, and I want to find that detail again, sometimes, I got a sea of green. Where did I highlight? But if I just kind of labeled it, this was the money part, talking about how rich this customer is. All right. Who changed her carpets every year and always bought the best. Oh, that just adds to the kind of hoity-toity, hoity-toity. I don't even know if that's really a word, but I'm putting it on there. Okay. Rich Mrs. Van Bruff, who had never even given him a cup of tea all day and made him go outside when he wanted to smoke. Okay, wait a minute. So she's rich. And I'm starting to think never even gave him a cup of tea. I assume like iced tea. I don't know. Maybe it's hot tea like in England. I don't know. But never even given him a cup of tea and made him go outside to smoke. So she's rich, kind of hoity-toity. She always has to have the best. I mean, these are just some of the thoughts I'm having. I'm also thinking she's not very generous. I'm writing not generous. And as I just kind of mull it over and he made him go outside to smoke, he's kind of sounding a little bitter. All right. I'm just going to write Eddie equals bitter. Okay. I know what I mean. Eddie is sounding bitter. But I don't have to write Eddie is starting to sound bitter. No, it's just quick notes, keywords, phrases. You want to be able to write very few words, but kind of summarize the long multi-sentence thought you had. See what we're doing here? This is annotation. Do you see how I highlight and I add the note? Because the word annotate requires a note. Otherwise, it's just highlighting. Okay, let's try this next part together. Let's do this together. Okay, next paragraph. Well, it was 4 o'clock and he had nearly finished. Okay, let's stop. 4 o'clock, nearly finished. Where are we in the day here? Okay, 4 o'clock for carpet fitter. What are you thinking? Oh, it's the end of the day. It's the end of the job. It's the end of the day. And so let's make note of that. Let's make note of end of day. Okay, I'll jot that. End of day. And wait, what words? What words told us that? 4 o'clock. Okay. Nearly finished. Okay, that's a good sign. I suppose it could go a couple days, but 4 o'clock, end of the day. All right, good. At least he would be able to get home early today. Eddie sat back and sighed. The job was done, and it was time for a last cigarette. Okay, so the job was done. It said that. And he's going to have one more cigarette. So how's he feeling? Like, why would he have a cigarette? Why? Because he's kind of celebrating. Hi, I did it. I'm done. Okay. So celebrating. I'll jot that over here. Celebrating. Kind of finish the job. And what were the words? Right. Okay. Sat back, sighed. Okay, good. Job was done. Yep. And it was time for a last cigarette. Kind of the final hurrah. Right. All right. You could even write that final hurrah. Okay. See what we're doing here, you guys? That's annotation. You still have a reading voice. You still read the words and you still think and process them. And you don't have to have anything in your hand. But then you want to record it. You want to make a note of what you are thinking next to the words. So if the text says this, highlight it. And what was your thought? Put it in the margin. That is what annotation is. Okay, I'm going to pop over to my screen here for a second because it's kind of like those cooking shows, where, I showed you, okay, this is what it might start like. Might be what it looks like, okay? But now let's pull it out of the oven and it's all done. Okay, well, look at your screen here because I had already done this a little bit. So you can kind of see, I'm not highlighting everything, you guys, just keywords, right? And I'm just writing phrases, no sentences. I'm using abbreviations, SIGs, right? Symbols, money sign, and exclamation points, because it was like, some kind of emotional reaction, at least for me, the reader. Okay, do you see how I'm also kind of drawing a line? Okay, this phrase made me think this, and this phrase made me think this. That's a pretty good habit to get into. Again, just because sometimes when you have several details in a row and you put your annotations, it's kind of like, well, which one meant what? So again, just kind of being able to dissect it can be super helpful. The other something I want you to notice is there are times that I had one thought about several details. Okay, and so this idea that she was rich and changed carpets every year. Okay, so, and that kind of sprinkled across 3 lines. I just bracketed. Okay, all of this is my thinking. Okay, I did it over here too. When he was going for that last smoke, and he was looking for his cigarettes, and he began tapping the pockets of his overalls, looking for the new packet of Marlboro he had bought. Oh, he's patting himself down. He's looking. Oh, yeah, I can picture that. So again, I just used a bracket. So you don't necessarily, for every word highlighted or every phrase highlighted, have to have a separate thought. You might highlight several because they all led you to this one thought. So bracket it, all right? Or kind of put a box around it or a bracket of some kind, and that will help you out. Okay, so in this lesson, we were learning that sometimes readers have to take notes outside the text because you can't write in the text. But when you want to take notes or you have to take notes, you have to remember what you read and you can write in the text, we call that annotating the text. All right, it's putting a note inside the text right next to the author's words. And you do see why it's faster, don't you? Right? Because you didn't actually have to write down what the author said. You just highlight it faster. Okay, now as we start to wrap up this lesson here, I want to take you back to one other thing, and I want to change our vocabulary. Okay, I want to change our vocabulary about this little guy. Okay, and so whether you're doing it on paper with a real highlighter or digitally, okay, with a virtual highlighter on a screen, I want us to recognize that whatever words the author said that you highlight, what the text says, what you're highlighting, okay, that's okay, but that's not annotation. That's highlighting, okay, and it's really not helpful. What you need to do is add a thought. The thinking voice thought. Why did you think that was important? It was important enough to highlight, so why did you highlight it? In fact, we're going to change our language. When we talk about annotation and we're actually going to bust out the highlighters, okay, we're not calling it highlighting anymore. When I say annotation, here's what I mean. I mean why lighting. Why are you highlighting those words? You are no longer allowed to just highlight or paint. We're done with that. All right? You got to put your thoughts next to it. That's what readers do. If you were in Mrs. Smecken's class right now, what we would do is actually practice highlighting or annotating a text. And I have one more legend. I promise next lesson we'll do something not a legend, not literature. But let's read one more legend. This is a new one. You haven't seen this one. It's called The American Pepper. Oh my goodness, you thought Carpet Fitter was good. You got to read this one. Okay, but I put it into 3 columns, okay, and I gave you extra wide margins because when you're first working on highlighting, you got to give yourself a little space, okay? And so I gave you extra wide margins between each of those columns of text, but what I'd like you to do is either print it out and do it on paper with a highlighter, and you need a pen or a pencil because you got to add the note, or you could edit the PDF and do it with a digital highlighter, okay? Totally up to you, but if you're in Mrs. Mecken's class, that's what we would do. Read and highlight throughout this whole text, tracking our thinking voice next to each of the author's details. All right, that's my task, but your teacher might have a better idea.